agree with that definition, right?
I mean, we can use that, I guess, for the purpose of the argument.
Well, that's what people refer to when we talk about God. We're talking about the supreme being and the creator who is the source and basis of everything that exists that is not himself. So under that uncontroversial definition, God is the necessary singular precondition
Uncontroversial.
of all that exists that is not himself.
Here comes all the
So
gobbledygook.
God is defined as being necessary. Now, if somebody comes along and says,
Oh man, look, Otangelo's in here.
God is not necessary, that is equivalent to saying God does not exist. Are we clear on that?
Okay. But if you're saying he's not necessary, that could still mean that he exists, even if it's not necessary.
No. Because then you would no longer be talking about God as defined. What you would then be talking about as an entity that may be very powerful, but would coexist with one or more things with independence from God. We would no longer be talking about God. Okay? We would be talking about some other entity that is not ultimate, but you're just simply calling it God.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying. If it's necessary, then you have to believe it, I guess.
So if we remove the concept where God is defined as the necessary precondition of everything, and by everything meaning everything that's not himself,
right?
Then we're no longer talking about God. We're talking about some other entity that we're calling.
Okay.
So when somebody says God is not necessary, for whatever reason, if they just say God is not necessary, that's the same thing as saying God doesn't exist.
Okay.
All right. Do you accept that?
Sure.
Okay. Now that you understand that the statement God is not necessary is equivalent to deny God, if I say no God needed, that is also an indirect denial of God. God is not necessary, no God needed. Okay? Or I could say God is not necessitated.
Okay.
God is not necessary. Now, since you claim to suspend judgment, I'm going to ask you a question for the purpose of figuring out as to whether your claim is counterfeit or not. Not that you're lying, but whether the claim is legit or not. So, when you invoke facts, do you positively reference
Here comes all the
necessity of God as
you
the
positively reference the necessary ultimatum of ultimate necessity of necessitation?
Not consciously. I mean,
No. So the answer is no.
No.
So when you and I invoke facts, we will either invoke facts either with referencing the necessity of God, or we will invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God.
Okay.
Invoking of facts cannot be in any other category because it's a true dichotomy, A or not A. Facts invoked with God.
If I click this, am I going to lose this?
Okay. Now, if
false
you
binary.
say, no, it's not a false binary. It's a true dichotomy, numbskull. It's A or not A. What's the third option, Mr. False Binary?
Somebody something.
Literally,
trolls.
there is.
What's the third option? What's the third option between A or not A?
Idiot yelling.
You mean God or no God?
No, sir. I'm asking you a question. The law of excluded middle. What's the third option for A or not A?
The third option is.
If I said A or B, you could say, well, that's a false binary. It could be C. And I could say, yeah, you're right. But if I say A or not A, is that a false binary? Listen, if you don't respond,
what you're doing.
Listen to me carefully. If you bicker with me, you're going to get server muted. Okay? This is what people do. I ask clarifying questions, and then what people do is they ignore what I'm asking them, and then they pretend to answer. Okay, is A or not A false binary?
It is not. That's the answer.
It is not.
I'm asking.
No.
Okay. Now, if I fill in a value for A, okay, is that a false binary?
No.
Good. That's
See how
exactly
much
what
just
I'm doing
nonsense
when I say
gobbledygook you
facts
got to
either
go through
will be
because he can't just
invoked
actually
with
defend
reference
his
to God
position.
or
He's going to make
without.
this.
All I've done is I filled in
argument
a value for A, sunshine. So it's not a
correct.
false binary. Now, are you going to
Can I answer
apologize
now?
for your false? Are you going to apologize because I just corrected you?
Can I answer? Can I
Are
argue
you
against it
going?
now?
Are you going to
Are you going to
apologize
apologize
for
for
your
being an
mistake?
asshole?
I'm just going to talk over you since you can't actually.
No,
There you go. Do
you're
it.
not.
Do it.
Okay.
You see what fools I have to deal with?
Yeah, look in the mirror.
Facts are either
Yeah.
invoked with or without reference to God. With or without. That's the same thing as A or not A. With or without. A or not A. You see, I just smoked this guy here.
No,
I showed him
does
why
A
his
mean God
accusation
doesn't
of
exist?
a
Though?
false binary was a false analysis, and yet he won't apologize. Now,
Right.
so when you invoke, and by the way, this analysis is not intended to throw you under the bus. It's to elucidate why the claim to suspend judgment about God is false. Okay. So when you invoke facts, you are invoking facts either with reference to the necessity of God or without referencing the necessity of God. So you told me that you invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God, correct?
I think he left.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. So if one says, I invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God, that is the same statement as saying, I invoke facts, no God needed.
Okay.
Are we clear?
Yes.
It's still different
Now,
than
if you
the God
say, I
doesn't
invoke
exist.
facts, no God needed, well, you've already agreed that the statement God is not needed is the denial of the existence of God.
Okay.
Oh, Tangelo, you got an open mic, bud.
Oh, that's Kermit the Frog.
So when agnostics are asked that question, well, they can't say, well, I invoke facts with reference to the necessity of God, because that would entail that God exists. So they have to opt for the only other option. They can't say, I don't know, because then I could just simply say, here's what you do. Do you do this? And they would have to plead amnesia. Okay? So they can't fall back on, I don't know, because they genuinely do know that when they invoke facts, they are not invoking those facts with positive reference to the necessity of God. So you're invoking facts without referencing that necessity of God, which is the same thing as saying, I invoke facts with no God needed.
Okay. All right.
If you make that, now if I say facts exist with no God needed, that constitutes the denial of God.
No, it doesn't. No.
Okay. So no, I get what you're saying.
Listen, no. Whoever just said no, I'm not going to put up with trolling. I've gone through this slowly.
I'm not trolling, Darth. You tried to explain this to me before, and I was trying to understand it.
Pipe. If
I don't mean to interrupt.
God is not necessary. All right. Listen, I don't look, as long as you're not trolling, and as long as the gentleman I'm talking to doesn't object, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, because sometimes when people like you, if you're not trolling, even though we disagree, sometimes your objection can be a good point for greater clarification.
Yeah, I think that's where he's stuck too.
Were you here for my entire interaction with him, with Cap'n?
Yeah. Or
okay.
For the
so
last
do
10
you
minutes
agree?
Anyway.
Okay. Well, that's not long enough. Okay.
Oh.
So do you agree that the statement God is not necessary equals the denial of God?
No.
Okay. Well, it is. Okay. God is defined as the necessary precondition of all things that are not himself. That's definitional.
Okay.
It's the definition that makes it true.
Okay, okay. So you're an idiot. Okay, I didn't say that. No, I'm talking about pipe. I didn't say because that's how God is defined. Therefore, God is true.
Oh no, that wasn't me.
Oh, okay. Who said that then?
Well, what I'm saying is the definition, the way you make the definition is what makes it true. According to what you said, basically, it's definitional.
Well, then if we're not agreeing to the definition, then we might as well stop talking.
No, I don't disagree with the definition. I mean, I agree that there's like a necessary precondition for all things, and if that's what we're defining as God, then I would change my position and say that I believe in God for the.
No, all right, fine. So Pepin, listen carefully. To say that God is not necessary is the equivalent of saying God does not exist. And the reason why is because in an uncontroversial definition of God, where God is defined as the creator of all things that are not himself, God is defined as the necessary precondition. So if one says God is not necessary for X, then that is a denial of the existence of God, whether or not the person speaking the words is aware of the ramifications. So to assert propositionally God is not necessary is to deny the existence of God.
That's the part I'm
I understand.
So to say that I invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God is the same thing as saying I invoke facts, no God needed. It's the same proposition, just simply. Okay, so when somebody says I'm an agnostic, I suspend judgment about God. I neither affirm nor deny God. Say, okay, fine. Sure. When you invoke facts, do you positively reference the necessity of God? And they say, no, I don't. When I invoke facts, it is without referencing the necessity of God. But that's the same thing as the statement of saying I invoke facts, no God needed, which constitutes the denial of God. So in spite of the claim to suspend judgment, the agnostic acknowledges that they're invoking facts with no God needed, which is the denial of God.
How is that the denial of God?
I don't see how those two things are equivalent.
Yeah.
What don't you see? What don't you see is not an equivalent.
So saying when I invoke facts, I don't positively refer to God's necessity.
Yeah, good. Let this.
I don't think that entails that you have a commitment that fact.
No.
He's not even going to let him finish a sentence.
You are invoking the fact. The fact can be invoked without referring to the necessity of God. The fact can be invoked without the necessity of God.
But you might think that, like, hey, maybe God really is necessary for this fact.
No. You're not. What you're focusing on are the intentions of the person. The intentions of the person is irrelevant. Okay. The issue is, what are the aware of it? What he affirms entails the denial of God.
Nope.
I don't see the entailment. Like if I invoke a fact,
the entailment is if I invoke facts, I say I invoke this fact with no God needed.
Sure, that would
with no God. Right.
Well,
that's
with no God
statement.
needed is different.
That's the same. That's the same statement as saying I invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God. The necessity of God without. Okay, listen carefully. The statement without the necessity of God is the same thing as saying no God needed. They mean the same thing.
To see if I can make some tutorials.
Sure. I guess what it seems to me is that saying like without referencing, like without mentioning God's necessity, is different from saying
God doesn't
without God
you're not getting
at all involved.
No, without the necessity. Without the necessity of God, with no God needed.
I don't think agnostics have to say things like that, right? The agnostic might say, I'm invoking this fact, and I don't know if God's necessary or not, so I take no position on whether whether God
by definition God is necessary.
You're gagging on a gnat and swallowing a camel here. Okay, this is not rocket surgery. Okay, to say I invoke a fact, that a fact is actual, no God needed, or with no God needed, is the same thing as to say I invoke a fact without referencing the necessity of God.
So
it is the same proposition. It's a different statement, but it's the same.
We agree with that part. It's the next.
I think if you're using if you're using reference in that sense, where you're not just using it to mean like,
Boya, listen to me. I'm really getting tired of this. Okay. It is the same proposition.
It's the same. It's the same. So
yeah, I mean, if you're getting tired of it, we can drop it.
I don't think that's
Captain, stop. Boya, this is not controversial.
Shut up. He's trying to speak. Go ahead.
It is the same proposition. Okay?
Can I ask you a question?
Debatable.
If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. We can drop it. Fine.
Well, so
no, the issue is not that I don't want to talk about it. Is that you're denying the elephant in the room.
He's losing his own
They're
room.
The same
finally.
proposition.
Why do these guys even give him this stuff? Like, stop giving
him
this
question about it because
crap.
Well, I have a question about it because I have a hard time understanding it myself.
Well, then you have no basis to. It's very simple. If you say, I invoke facts.
Darth.
Recorded, actually.
It's a good example of it.
Is the same thing to say, I invoke facts with no necessity
saying the same damn thing. We know that part, all right?
Yeah.
We know that part.
Sure.
Right, and it's the same. Then it's the same thing as saying, I invoke facts, no God needed.
Right. Yeah. Those three are all equivalent to each other.
Right. Now, if you assert for any fact that the fact no God needed to invoke that fact, no God needed is the denial of God. If you say God is not needed, that is the denial of God.
I agree with that.
Okay, good. So then you should no longer disagree. Well, listen.
No, I don't think you got to my disagreement.
You know what? I don't want to have to server meet you because you guys are now bickering with something that is not controversial. To say I invoke facts without the necessity of God is the same thing I invoke facts with no God needed. To assert no God needed as a part of the statement is the denial of God.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
totally on board with that.
Objectively true. Let's move on.
Every agnostic cannot affirm that they're invoking facts with the necessity of God. Every agnostic is left with the default position that they are invoking facts.
Why do these guys agree to that? I don't agree to that.
Necessity of God.
Why couldn't they be indifferent about that?
Because they
we're going in circles.
Then you would be brain damaged or they would be dishonest. They're not indifferent about it. They don't have amnesia.
Pretending to read people's minds.
Let me ask you this question. Boyle, did you have food today?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you thank God for your food?
Surely did.
Okay. So you invoke facts with reference to the necessity of God, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when an atheist says, when you invoke facts, do you reference the necessity of God? They go,
So I think it's. I don't know if you're cutting.
You're just. No, we're done. You're splitting hairs here. The bottom line is we can show that the agnostic claim to suspend judgment is false by what they do affirm.
No, you
and
can't.
They affirm
no,
that they invoke
you can't.
facts
No, you can't.
without
No, you can't. You're just making a
the
claim.
necessity of God, which is the same proposition as invoking facts with no God needed.
No.
It's just that when you phrase it without the necessity of God, it's not as clear as saying, I invoke facts with no God needed. It's much clearer when you say it that way, but they are the same proposition.
No, they're not.
It's not debatable.
Yeah.
And we can leave it there. Somebody says, that's fine.
Right. So every agnostic will have to affirm that position. If they don't, they're either fundamentally stupid or they're lying.
Okay, so I think what's more interesting is the implications of this. Let's say we accept all that, because that appears to be true. I think what's more controversial are the implications that people derive from, maybe the affirmation of the statement you're making.
So the person who claims that they're suspending judgment, they don't suspend judgment when they invoke facts, because they're invoking facts with no God needed, which is the denial of God.
No, it's not.
So what they do affirm contradicts their claim that they're suspending judgment.
Oh, did I just get booted?
So based on what you're saying, I'll change my position and I'll say that I, will then affirm God. Okay, in this conversation, what comes next after that? Let's say once you get to that step, what?
Well, the point is, when we deal with many atheists on the interweb, as well as agnostics, they want to try to
I know everybody
their
thinks this guy is so entertaining, but it's
as
just
simply a state of incredulity.
frustrating.
But that is a misrepresentation. Whether it's intended or not is besides the point. They all know that they are purposely not acknowledging God. They know this.
Okay.
They're purposely choosing not to invoke God. And so upon a transcendental analysis, the refusal to affirm God constitutes the denial of God, whether they realize it or
not. I think that what a lot of atheists reject is the idea, because I think the definition of God is what's the problem here, because a lot of them think of God as like this magical bearded man in the sky who sent his son down here and did all, and wants to bring you to heaven. I think
there's nothing controversial about talking about a supreme being who is the creator of all things that are not himself. That's not a controversial definition. Now, they may not believe that that's actual. Okay, so there's nothing controversial about that. So the bottom line here is this. The reason why many atheists and people who adopt agnosticism is because, first and foremost, for whatever reason, they do not want to acknowledge God. So because they don't want to acknowledge
this is why
God,
I say Darth claims to read people's minds.
Fall back on
this is just frustrating and stupid.
They want.
And I'm kind of disappointed in these two guys just giving it to them.
As an autobiographical statement.
I'm going to go work on some stuff to work on.
That
Hopefully I'll be
does
back
not
pretty soon. I wanted to make some new
constitute the
videos.
denial of God, because they know they can't
drum sample stuff. Let me
defend the
shut this
denial
guy
of
up.
God. So because they can't defend the
I'd like to
denial of
hear
God,
from
but
you
they
guys. Wow.
refuse
How is
to
that still
acknowledge
playing?
that God exists, they want to cast themselves in terms of an autobiographical statement. Golly shucks, I'm just unconvinced.
Shut up, Discord.
Okay.
Can I speak?
There are some atheists do that, but I think some of them just have a different idea.
No. The only atheists that don't do that are the ones who say, "Yeah, I'm an atheist. There is no God." But if they're not the atheists who say, "Well, atheism is just the rejection of a claim."
Oh, I gotta leave, huh? I'm just gonna disconnect. I'm sure he's gonna say something. But whatever, I don't care. Anyway, I kind of wanted to ask you guys, when it comes to dynamics plugins like compressors and gates and things like that, you're used to using attack, release, and hold envelope names like that, right? You know what that means? You don't? Do you have trouble with that? Or is that okay? Oh, it's I'm thinking we're probably gonna put more tooltips over our controls, but you guys, do you want different names than attack and release and hold? I don't think you would, but you know, I never know. I did some live recording the other day in order to make some tutorials, but man, I don't know about this. The lyrics are kind of crazy. I'm gonna clean this up, and I'll be back. I just thought, man, I got a chance to stream some Darth Dawkins, but it's just too frustrating. Just I haven't.